when Carolina yelled at me in front of the entire family, "Stop resting and come scrub the floor." I felt something break inside me. Not because of the shouting or the public humiliation, but because my own son, Daniel, kept eating in silence as if what his wife had just done was the most normal thing in the world. In that moment, I understood that if I didn't act, that house would end up devouring what little remained of me. I looked at the plate in front of me, the Sunday dinner I had helped prepare, and thought about all the times I had endured worse words just to avoid problems. But that night, when I saw my two granddaughters lower their eyes, ashamed of their mother's behavior, my blood burned. I refused to let them grow up believing that a grandmother, a woman, a mother should bow her head to injustice. Carolina insisted again, slapping her hand on the table. "Josefina, the floor is dirty, can't you see?" I took a deep breath, raised my head, and said firmly, "If it's dirty, clean it yourself." But before continuing, I have a special invitation for you. Subscribe to the channel and leave a like. It helps me see your support and shows that you enjoy my stories. And comment below. Tell me which city you're watching from. Now, let's continue. The living room fell into a silence sharp enough to cut the air. Carolina's eyes widened, as if I had committed a sin. "That old woman is useless in this house," she shouted. I stood up, but I didn't shake, didn't shrink, didn't look down. On the contrary, I felt stronger than I had in years. "Useless? No," I said slowly, looking straight into her eyes. "And you're about to find out why." I walked to my purse, opened it calmly, and took out a yellow envelope. My heart was pounding so loudly I could hear it in my ears, but my hands were as steady as they used to be when I sewed my children's school uniforms. I placed the envelope on the table for everyone to see. Daniel swallowed hard. Carolina narrowed her eyes, irritated. "And what's that?" "A letter of apology," she spat with contempt. I didn't answer. It's what this family has ignored for years, the truth. The entire atmosphere shifted. My granddaughters set down their utensils. My sister-in-law leaned forward, curious. My mother-in-law, who was visiting that day, pressed her lips together as if sensing a storm coming. Carolina snatched the envelope. "What stupidity is this, Josefina?" "Open it." She did, with that usual arrogance of hers, as if nothing in the world could ever shake her. But as her eyes moved across the documents, her expression began to fall apart. The color drained from her face. Daniel, worried, leaned over to look. What is this?" he stammered. I sat down again, calmer than I had felt in years. "The truth about this house," I said softly, savoring every word. "The house you live in belongs to me." Carolina shot me a cold, sharp look. "What do you mean, yours?" "We bought it." "No," I shook my head gently. "Relax. I bought it with my savings 10 years ago. The contract is in my name. You only live here because I allowed it. While I recovered, while you needed me, while we were still a family." The silence was so deep that even the wall clock seemed to stop ticking. Daniel, his eyes red, whispered, "Why didn't you ever tell me, Mom?" "Because I didn't want this to turn into a war," I replied. Then I looked at Carolina, who gripped the documents as if she could tear them apart with her glare. "But now I see that you two were the ones who started the war," I added, and my daughter-in-law exploded. "No, this is a trap, a lie. This house is ours," she shouted. I stood up again, slowly, with all the dignity I had left. "Carolina," I said firmly, "do you see the notary's signature? The date? The official records? None of that can be faked. Everything is legal." She trembled. Daniel was frozen in place. I walked over to my granddaughters, who were still in shock, and wrapped my arms around them. "Don't worry, my loves," I whispered. "Grandma is fine." I returned to my chair and looked at all of them. I've endured humiliation, shouting, contempt. You all thought I was weak, that I was old, that you could step on me. But I am useful. Oh yes, I am. I'm useful for setting boundaries. I'm useful for defending what's mine. I'm useful for reminding you that age does not take away my worth. Then I delivered the final blow, the one that closed an entire chapter of my life. I'm useful for putting each of you in your place. No one spoke after that. Not even a breath could be heard. Only the faint crumpling of the envelope in Carolina's hands, her pride shattering for the first time. The heavy silence of the table still rang in my ears as I walked back to my room. Outside, the family murmured in frantic whispers, questions, steps, nervous movements. I closed the door and leaned against it, letting my heartbeat settle. I had thrown the first punch, but I knew Carolina wasn't the type to accept defeat. She would retaliate, and I had to be ready. I sat on the bed, letting my hands brush over the quilt I had stitched years ago. Its soft colors and firm stitches reflected my life, patient, devoted, but also strong. When my husband, Oscar, died, a part of me broke forever. He had been my rock, my partner, my safe place. And although Daniel, our only son, was my greatest pride, I watched him drift away, swallowed up by his life with Carolina. I remained behind like an old piece of furniture, unnoticed but kept around out of convenience. Maybe that's why I held on to that old drawer, the dark wooden one Oscar always kept locked. I never knew why. I assumed it was work papers, small things, memories. But when he passed away and Daniel asked me to move in while I recovered, I made the hardest decision of my life, to open it. That night, while everyone slept, I pulled out the drawer and sat on the floor. I expected nothing special, but the moment I looked inside, I knew Oscar had kept those things for me. There were documents, receipts, contracts, everything in his handwriting, everything addressed to me. And among them, the original contract for the house, signed by him, paid by him, registered in my name. I remembered how years ago Oscar told me he wanted to leave me something safe, so I would never depend on anyone, not even on Daniel. I thought he meant a small savings account or an insurance policy. I never imagined he had bought this house and put it under my name without me knowing. I cried the whole night. I cried because I felt loved. And I cried because I finally understood what my husband had seen long before I did. Carolina had never liked me. To her, I was always a burden. And he, my Oscar, wanted to protect me even after death. Lost in that memory, I heard a noise in the hallway. I stood and cracked the door open. I saw Carolina's shadow heading to the kitchen, the envelope in her hand. Her posture revealed anger, fear, humiliation. And though part of me trembled, another part smiled. I walked to the kitchen without hurry. When I entered, Carolina had the papers spread across the counter, her hands shaking as she read. "This can't be legal," she muttered. "It is," I said from the doorway. She jumped as if she had seen a ghost. "Don't stick your nose where it doesn't belong. It's my house, Carolina. I decide where I belong." She clutched the papers as if she could make them disappear. "Daniel didn't know anything. You betrayed him, you lied to him." "No, I simply stayed quiet," I said. "Forgive me if I didn't consult you about my decisions, just like you never consulted me when you started treating me like a maid." Carolina took a step toward me, hatred burning in her eyes. "These papers won't get you anywhere. Daniel signed things. I signed things. We live here. This belongs to us. But not legally," I replied. "We'll see about that," she hissed. I looked at her not with fear, but with compassion. "Carolina, you've always believed that strength comes from shouting louder. You're wrong. Real strength is in silence, in what we hold inside, in what we wait to reveal at the right moment." She breathed fast, like a cornered animal. "This isn't going to stay like this, Josefina." "No," I answered calmly. "This is just the beginning." Carolina slammed both hands on the counter, but she no longer intimidated me. I had the truth. I had the documents. I had my husband's words. And above all, I had a dignity that had finally awakened. I picked up the envelope, put the documents back inside with care, and as I walked out of the kitchen, I said, "You can scream all you want, Carolina, but screaming won't erase deeds, signatures, or years of humiliation." She didn't respond. She just stood there, shaking with rage. When I returned to my room, I knew that even though I had dropped the first bomb, many more explosions were coming. And I was ready, because for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a burden. I felt powerful. Carolina didn't appear for the rest of the night. After our confrontation in the kitchen, she locked herself in the room she shared with Daniel. I heard thuds, desperate whispers, and the unmistakable sound of papers being crushed. I didn't sleep, I couldn't. I stayed sitting on my bed, holding the envelope like a shield. Every time I thought of Oscar, of his firm handwriting on those documents, a mix of pain and strength ran through my chest. He had foreseen everything. He had seen something I, out of love or blindness, never wanted to admit. At dawn, I heard their bedroom door swing open. Heavy footsteps rushed down the stairs. It was Daniel. He was walking fast, as if the world were collapsing on top of him. I heard him enter the kitchen and pour himself some coffee. A few minutes later, I took a deep breath and stepped out to meet him. He was sitting at the table, elbows on the surface, his head in his hands. When he finally looked up as I entered, his eyes were red. Not from anger, but from shame. "Mama," he whispered, his voice breaking. "Why? Why did you never tell me?" I sat across from him, the envelope still in my hand. "Daniel, I didn't tell you because I didn't want this house to become a battlefield. Your father wanted to leave you something secure, but he also wanted to leave me a home, a place to grow old without depending on anyone. But he clutched his chest, torn. "I'm your son." "Yes," I said gently, "but you're also a married man now, and your life started revolving around Carolina. And well, you know how she is." He lowered his gaze. "I shouldn't have allowed her to treat you like that." I didn't respond. That was something he would have to carry himself. After a long silence, he added, "Carolina says those documents don't mean anything, that there are newer deeds, that we paid for this house with our own effort." "Our effort?" I asked softly. "Or yours?" Daniel hesitated. I saw it, saw him truly hesitate. And then he said the sentence that shattered what little innocence I had left. "Carolina handled everything. She took care of the payments, the installments, the bank renewals." I closed my eyes. Of course she did. Carolina was the one who managed their accounts, who looked at the papers, who signed everything. And knowing her as well as I did, she was capable of anything to secure a roof over her head, even one that wasn't hers. "Daniel," I asked quietly, "did you ever check the house documents yourself?" He was going to say yes. I saw the lie forming on his lips, but the truth hit him like a brick. "No," he admitted. I trusted her. I nodded. Love without vigilance is fertile ground for abuse. Daniel clenched his fists. His expression changed. He was no longer the guilty son. He was the man who suddenly saw the cracks in his entire world. "Mama, what exactly was in that drawer?" "Not just the deed," I said. "There were receipts, transfers, payments in my name, and something I know will hurt you." "What?" "Oscar left you a letter. In it, he wrote that he bought the house to protect us from people who might take advantage of you or me." Daniel broke down. His breathing turned uneven. "Papa said that about Carolina?" "He didn't mention names," I answered softly, "but he knew. She's skilled, controlling, and she married you 3 months after you lost your job. Didn't you think that was odd?" Daniel shut his eyes, struggling against the truth. I continued, "If you two had really paid for this house, why did you stay under the same mortgage your father signed? Why were you never registered as owners? Why did Carolina never show you a contract with your name on it?" Daniel got up and paced in circles. "I don't know, Mom. I don't know. I trusted her." "I know," I replied. "But trust doesn't mean giving someone your entire life." At that moment, Carolina came down the stairs. Her hair was pulled tightly back, her face half done with makeup, like she'd been crying, and her expression was sharp and cold. "You're still here, Josefina," she said, refusing to look at me. "I am," I answered. "Well, I don't know for how much longer." Daniel turned sharply. "Carolina, enough." "No, Daniel, not enough," she shot back, raising her voice without ever meeting my eyes. "This house is ours. We've put years into it. I'm not letting some old woman come and ruin everything." "Carolina," I said calmly, "what was in that envelope that made you so nervous?" She pressed her lips together, refusing to answer. But Daniel looked at her fully, maybe for the first time in years. "What are you hiding?" That was when her mask began to crack. Her breathing quickened, her hands trembled, and then Daniel grabbed the envelope from my hands, pulled out the papers, and spread them on the table. "Is this fake?" he asked, almost begging. "Answer me, Carolina. Is it fake?" She stepped back, looking like a trapped animal. I just wanted to protect us. Your mother is volatile. She forgets things. Imagine if one day, if one day what? I cut in. If one day I couldn't defend myself and you planned to take everything? Carolina went silent. If you truly cared about this house, about this family, you would have treated me with respect. But from the moment I stepped inside, your only goal was to erase me. I pointed at the papers. You weren't worried I would forget something. You were terrified that I would remember too much. Daniel stepped back. His whole world was collapsing before him. And I knew we had only scratched the surface. There was another truth. One Carolina would die before revealing. And in that moment, I knew I would uncover it. After the confrontation in the kitchen, every corner of the house crackled with tension. It felt as if the walls, the paintings, even the air itself were about to crack. Daniel didn't say a word. He walked like a man carrying a secret too heavy for his own bones. Carolina, on the other hand, wasn't just angry, she was desperate. And desperation made her more dangerous than ever. That afternoon, after putting my things in order, I decided to lock myself in my room for a while. But before I reached the door, I heard voices downstairs, first whispers, then broken phrases, and finally Carolina's sharp, bitter tone leaking through the half-open door of their bedroom. I moved closer, slow and silent. My heart beat hard, not from fear, but because some part of me knew I was about to hear the truth I'd ignored for years. Daniel, listen, Carolina said. She can't stay here. We can't throw her out, Carolina. Enough, he replied, his voice heavy with exhaustion. Mom has rights. This house, she snapped, is ours. You and I made it a home. And now that old woman wants to take it from us. Take everything. Her voice struck like a slap. Daniel didn't answer immediately. When he did speak, it was barely above a whisper, broken. Carolina, if what Mom said is true. She let out a humorless laugh. True. Of course it's true. But we can't let people think you depend on your mother. That makes you look weak, Daniel. My hand flew to my chest. That wasn't love. That was control. Daniel's voice cracked. I don't care how people see me. I care about my mom. Silence followed, long, heavy, poisonous. Then I heard the unthinkable. Well, if you care so much, Carolina hissed, have her declared incompetent. My heart stopped. Daniel murmured, What are you saying? It's the logical thing to do, she insisted. She's 62. She forgets things, she gets distracted, and after the surgery she's been more fragile. With the right diagnosis, a medical report, we could make her sign the transfer of the house. That's illegal, Daniel whispered. Not if we do it properly, she said, as calmly as if discussing a grocery list. The lawyer already knows. He just needs to see her behave confused. And trust me, that won't be hard. My hands curled into fists. I stood there, pressed against the wall, listening to the monster I had unknowingly welcomed into our home. Daniel sounded dizzy. Carolina, what have you done? What was necessary, she said, no shame in her voice. Unless you want to end up on the street. Unless you want that old woman to leave us with nothing. That old woman. The phrase cut through me like a rusty knife. But inside, something lit up. Not fear, not sorrow, but determination. Daniel's footsteps came toward the door. I pulled back just in time and hurried to my room. My breathing trembled, but my mind was sharp. Closing the door felt like lowering the curtain on a play I'd finally watched clearly. I sat on the bed, staring at the floor. Declare me incompetent. Me, who raised a child alone, cared for a sick husband, worked decades as a seamstress to keep food on the table. Hard to believe. But Carolina was an expert manipulator. She always had been. I remembered another moment years ago. The first time I stayed with them after my surgery. The pills she insisted I take at exact hours. The strange tea she prepared only for me. A neighbor once said, Your daughter-in-law is very attentive, isn't she? She even checks your mail before handing it to you. There had been signs. Too many. But blinded by the idea of family, I chose not to see them. In my room, I grabbed the envelope again and placed the documents on the bed. My weapons. And with them, the memory of Oscar, his letters telling me to trust my instincts, to be careful, to remember that danger doesn't always come from outside. The hours that followed were long and heavy. I thought about everything I had lost by staying silent, my voice, my authority, my dignity. And I swore I would never again let anyone take away what remained of my life. As the evening fell, I went down to the laundry room to find clothes to hang. Passing through the hall, I heard voices again, lower this time, secretive. And if Josefina refuses to sign? Daniel asked. We'll make her sign anyway, Carolina answered. No one will believe her. She's an old woman. What could she possibly prove? I clenched my teeth. The conversation continued. And the lawyer? Daniel asked. Tomorrow, Carolina answered quickly. He's coming tomorrow to evaluate her. I froze. A psychological evaluation. What did they expect? That I would get angry? Cry? Lose control? And then it hit me. They wanted me desperate. They wanted me unstable. They wanted me weak. A submissive Josefina served their plans. An awakened Josefina was a threat. The decision formed inside me without hesitation. I wasn't going to run or cry or beg. I would look that lawyer straight in the eyes and show him exactly who I was. I tightened my grip on the documents. Oscar, from wherever time had placed him, felt close. Out loud. Even though I was alone, I said, Carolina picked the wrong woman to mess with. And for the first time in a long while, I felt the living flame of a woman who no longer feared anything. Morning arrived with a strange, heavy silence, as if the entire house was holding its breath. I had been awake since 5. Sleep had been impossible knowing the lawyer would be coming to evaluate me. I prepared calmly. A warm bath. My light blue dress, the one Oscar always said lit up my eyes. Hair pinned back with a simple clip. I didn't want to look perfect. I wanted to look steady, unshakable. As I walked downstairs, I heard whispers in the kitchen. Carolina was speaking quickly, nervously. Remember what I told you, she hissed. Don't contradict her, let her talk. The more confused she seems, the better. I breathed deeply and kept walking. When I entered the kitchen, both of them jumped. Good morning, I said evenly. Good morning, Mom, Daniel muttered without meeting my eyes. Carolina forced a smile. Josefina, did you sleep well? Her fake sweetness churned my stomach. I slept exactly as I needed to, I replied. I poured myself coffee and sat at the table. Carolina and Daniel exchanged an uneasy glance. The lawyer will be here at 9, Carolina announced. It'll be quick. I nodded. I have nothing to hide. The tension in her shoulders told me she didn't like that answer. At exactly 9, the doorbell rang. Carolina rushed to open it like a child terrified of losing control of her game. The lawyer entered with a polished, professional attitude. Gray suit, briefcase, a perfectly practiced expression. Good morning, he greeted. I'm attorney Ramiro Salcedo. Carolina greeted him with suspicious enthusiasm. Daniel kept his eyes down. I simply nodded. Mrs. Josefina, he said with a polite smile. I'm just here to talk with you for a moment. Of course, I replied. Let's sit in the living room. We took our places, Carolina on my right, Daniel on my left, as if they wanted to trap me between them. Ramiro opened his briefcase and took out a notebook. Before we begin, he said, could you tell me your full name? I didn't blink. Josefina Castro Gomez. Your age? 62. And do you know what day it is today? Tuesday, I answered without hesitation. And if you'd like, I can tell you the year too. 2025. Carolina stiffened. Ramiro continued. Have you had any recent memory problems? Confusion. I tilted my head and asked softly, and have you ever had the experience of someone trying to force you out of your own home? He swallowed. This is just a routine evaluation. Ah, I replied. Routine, or part of my daughter-in-law's plan to have me declared incompetent, so she can take my property? Carolina choked on her own breath. That's a lie, she screamed. Ramiro, don't let her invent things. You know that's not true. But the lawyer said nothing. He lowered his gaze, and in that silence I knew. He had been bought, or at least persuaded. I leaned toward him slowly. Attorney Salcedo, I said in a low voice, before you continue your evaluation, I want to say something very important. And then, just like you requested, came the line for the audience. Before we continue, tell me in the comments what you think of this story so far, and what you would do in my place. Don't leave the video. because what comes next will send chills down your spine. I settled back on the sofa, took a deep breath, and smiled. Now, I said, let's continue. Carolina's face was bright red. Daniel looked ready to faint. Ramiro cleared his throat. Mrs. Josefina, could you tell me where you were born? In Jalisco, I answered. And I lived there for 34 years. Would you like me to tell you the number of my old house too? Or shall we talk about the forged signatures someone used without my permission? Carolina let out a shriek. You have no proof. None. I turned slowly toward her. I have more proof than you think, Carolina. You should be ashamed. I opened my bag and took out a blue folder. I set it on the table. Attorney, I said firmly, these are the documents I found. Documents, he asked. Yes, including papers signed by someone pretending to be me. Among them an application to admit me into a nursing home. Would you like me to show them to you? Carolina went pale. That's not mine, she stammered. The handwriting is yours, I replied. Ramiro looked over the papers, his brow tightening. Then his face darkened. This is serious. Very serious. Exactly, I replied. Serious enough that you came here thinking I had no idea what they were plotting. Daniel covered his face with both hands. Mama, nothing. I cut him off sharply for the first time. You chose to look the other way. And whoever looks away also betrays. Carolina shot to her feet. I won't let you keep manipulating Daniel. Ramiro, finish this already. Tell her she's confused. Tell her she needs help. Ramiro closed his notebook and stood. I'm not signing anything here, he said sternly. This isn't a case of incapacity. It's a case of abuse. Carolina opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Fury flooded her eyes. I'm going to destroy you, Josefina. Try, I answered. I've lived too many years in fear. The ones ahead will be mine. Ramiro packed his things. Before he left, he turned to me. I recommend taking legal action, ma'am. You're in danger. I nodded. I will. Carolina slammed her hand against the table. Daniel looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. And I felt something return, something I thought I had lost forever. My voice. When the lawyer walked out, leaving behind his briefcase full of shame and the truth stamped across his face, the house fell into a strange silence. Not a calm one. The kind that appears right before a storm rips the roof off a home. Daniel locked himself in his room, defeated. Carolina vanished for hours, like a wounded shadow searching for a corner to plan her next attack. I, on the other hand, made coffee and sat at the dining table. The day wasn't over, and the worst was still coming. At 4 in the afternoon, while reviewing Oscar's documents for what felt like the 100th time, my phone vibrated. Unknown number. Hello. A trembling voice answered. Mrs. Josefina, it's me. Clara. Clara. The young woman who cleaned the house 3 times a week. Always kind, always quiet, always wide-eyed whenever Carolina yelled. What's wrong, dear? I asked. I can't talk long, she whispered. But I need to tell you something. Something I heard today. I straightened in my chair. I'm listening. Your daughter-in-law called someone. I don't know who. She said everything went wrong, and that she needed to speed up the other plan before you could do anything. My heart tightened. The other plan. What did that mean? I don't know, ma'am, Clara continued. But I think they're planning something tonight. I froze. Are you sure about what you heard, Clara? Absolutely. Anything else? She said your name. She said, Josefina won't be a problem anymore. But if we don't do this fast, it'll be too late. Cold ran down my spine. Thank you, child. Truly. Please don't stay alone tonight, ma'am. I beg you. When the call ended, I had to steady myself against the table. The house was still silent, but no longer an ordinary silence. It was a watched silence, a hunted silence. I looked toward the window. The sun was setting, painting the evening a disturbing orange. Carolina's shadow crossed the backyard, moving fast, nervous, phone pressed to her ear. I couldn't hear her, but her body spoke clearly. She wasn't trying to push me out of the house anymore. She was trying to destroy me. I stood slowly, gathered my documents, my bag, and my phone. If she was planning something, I had to move first. I walked to Daniel's room and knocked 3 times. Hijo. Come in, he said, voice dull. I entered and found him sitting on the bed, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor like a scolded child. Daniel, I said, I need you to tell me the truth. The whole truth. He lifted his head. His eyes were full of tears, but not for me. For himself. Mama, I don't know what to believe. Carolina says you want to destroy our life. You say she wants to destroy yours. I'm in the middle. You're not in the middle, I said softly. You're either with me or with her. And you have to choose today. Daniel swallowed hard. Carolina needs me, or she manipulates me, he whispered. Silence, son, I said gently. Listen, do you love me? Of course I do. Then prove it. Tell me what else Carolina has done. Tell me what she hid from you. I watched him tense, his whole body fighting itself. His love for me, his emotional dependence on her, his fear of losing his marriage. Finally, he exhaled a long, painful breath, and then he spoke. Months ago, Carolina started having meetings with a lawyer, though not the one who came today, another one, someone whose name she never told me. Meetings for what? She said it was to prepare for the future, to get everything organized. I thought she simply wanted to make sure you were taken care of. Taken care of or controlled, Daniel whispered. I don't know, but once I heard her mention a word. What word? Incapacity. My chest tightened. What else? I asked. She talked about selling the house, moving to a bigger one, getting you out of the way. I covered my face with one hand. Getting me out of the way. Exactly like that. Daniel kept talking, as if he was finally releasing a weight he had been carrying for years. And today I heard her calling someone, I don't know who, but she said she needed to move forward with Plan B. Plan B. Yes, that's what she called it. A cold chill ran down my spine. Daniel, I said in a low voice, do you know where Carolina is right now? In the backyard. She's been on the phone for hours. I don't know with whom. I nodded and stood up. Stay here, I told him. And whatever happens, do not come out or get involved. Where are you going, Mom? To end this. I went down the stairs with steady steps, but before stepping into the yard, I stopped behind the hallway door. I could clearly hear Carolina's voice, sharp like a blade. Yes, I'll do it tonight. Don't worry. Josefina doesn't suspect a thing. My breath halted for a moment. No, you won't come. I don't want witnesses. I'll handle it. Of course I can. That old woman doesn't mean anything anymore. That sentence pushed me toward the next decision. I had to record everything. I needed the final proof. I turned on my phone's recorder. I slowly opened the patio door, and without Carolina noticing, every word came out clear, crisp, undeniable. She kept talking, unaware of my presence. I'll take care of it once and for all. And when it's done, we'll sell the house, all right? My hands trembled not with fear, but with indignation. I stepped closer. The recording continued. Her voice continued, and I knew it. I now had everything I needed to destroy Carolina, and I would. That night, while Carolina prowled around the house thinking she was untouchable, I locked myself in my room and listened over and over to the recording I had captured. Every word she whispered, believing herself invincible, hit me like a stone in the chest. I'll take care of it tonight. That old woman means nothing now. I don't want witnesses. Those weren't just insults. They were a confession, a sentence she had written for herself without knowing I was listening. But I didn't want to destroy her yet. No. Before she fell, she had to face the truth in front of everyone she had manipulated, especially my son. Only then would the wound stop bleeding. Only then would I reclaim my name, my place. I put my phone in my purse and walked toward the window. Carolina was still outside, pacing in fast, nervous circles with the phone pressed to her ear. She looked like a cornered animal, though not cornered enough to realize she had already lost the moment I pressed record. As I watched her, something awakened in me, something I hadn't felt in months, maybe years. Strength. That kind of strength that appears only when life forces you to stop trembling. When she finally came back inside, I saw her from the corner of my eye. Her expression was stiff, almost clumsy. I wondered if she sensed the difference in me, if she sensed that I was no longer her victim. But I doubted it. People like her never believe the quiet, older woman, the one who cooks, who clears the table, is capable of moving in silence. That's why my plan would work. I walked to the kitchen and took a breath. Carolina, I said with a calmness that surprised even me, don't worry about dinner tonight. I'll take care of it. She turned around and looked at me as if I had said something absurd. You, she replied with a poisonous smile. Trying to prove you're useful again? Something like that, I said, matching her smile. I saw a flicker in her eyes, fear. Small, almost invisible, but fear nonetheless. People like her react like that when they can't read you, when something doesn't fit. They start to panic, and I was ready to use every shadow of her insecurity against her. I spent the rest of the afternoon preparing dinner. I was meticulous with everything. The timing, the ingredients, the smells. But the dinner wasn't the most important thing. It was the table, the place where I would finally expose the truth. While I was chopping vegetables, Daniel walked into the kitchen, leaning quietly against the counter. Do you need help? He asked. I looked at him. His eyes were broken, torn, but there was something new in them. Distrust toward his wife. And although it hurt me, I couldn't allow that distrust to be weak. You don't need to help, I said gently, but tonight you need to listen. Don't talk. Just listen. He swallowed. Mom, do you really think Carolina? Daniel, I interrupted softly. Tonight you'll know everything. Carolina entered at that moment. Her eyes bounced between us like a predator sensing danger. What are you two whispering about? Dinner. I answered calmly, nothing important. She pressed her lips together, uncertain. Well, it better turn out good. I don't want to be embarrassed in front of my mother. I smiled to myself. She had no idea of the embarrassment that was coming. Don't worry, I said. Tonight's dinner will be unforgettable. At 8 o'clock sharp, everything was ready. The table set perfectly, the plates prepared, the lights dimmed. It looked like a scene prepared for something important, and it was. Carolina appeared in a tight dress with excessive makeup. She always treated these gatherings like a chance to show she was the queen of the house. Her mother arrived minutes later, a cold woman with eyes that scanned the house as if evaluating merchandise. I had always suspected that Carolina's cruelty had a source. Seeing her mother confirmed it. Good evening, Mrs. Josefina, she said with forced politeness. Good evening, I replied with the same mask. When everyone had taken their seats, Carolina stood up with her glass raised high. I want to make a toast, she announced. To family, to unity, and to finally having everything under control in this house. She looked directly at me. I lifted my glass as well. To family, I said, and because tonight everyone will finally learn the truth. A strange silence settled over the table. Carolina frowned. Daniel watched me with uncertainty. Her mother pressed her lips together. Everything was ready. I placed my purse on the table and took out my phone. Before we eat, I said slowly, I want you to listen to something. Carolina tensed instantly. What are you doing? Just listen, I replied. You'll recognize every word. I pressed play. The sound filled the room like thunder. Yes, I'll do it tonight. Don't worry. Josefina suspects nothing. Carolina turned pale. I don't want witnesses. I'll take care of it. Carolina's mother opened her eyes wide in disbelief. That old woman means nothing anymore. Daniel dropped his fork, and for the first time in months, I did not tremble. Carolina shot to her feet. That's not what it sounds like. It's out of context. Josefina manipulated everything. Carolina, I said with a calmness that burned, I recorded you without your knowledge. Every word is real. You were planning to harm me. Plan B, remember? Getting me out of the way, declaring me incompetent, selling the house. Lies, she screamed, slamming her hand against the table. I heard that call, Daniel whispered, his voice breaking. Mom isn't lying. Carolina looked at him as if he had stabbed her. Daniel, don't be naive. She wants to destroy us. No, Carolina, he said, standing up. The only person who wanted to destroy someone was you. You wanted to destroy her, my mother. Carolina stepped back. Her breathing turned sharp and erratic. Her mother stepped in. Carolina, what have you done? Nothing, Mom. It's her. She's always interfering in my life. I took a step forward. Carolina, You were going to poison the dinner tonight. That's what Clara heard. You said yourself you needed to move the plan forward. No, I wasn't going to, she cried, breaking down. I just wanted... What? I asked. My death? My absence? My health? Carolina collapsed to her knees. I just wanted Daniel to love me more. I didn't want anyone between us. Your insecurity, I said, does not excuse your crimes. Her mother covered her mouth, horrified. Carolina, she whispered, I can't help you this time. Daniel, with trembling hands, dialed the police. Carolina wept, not out of remorse, but because she had lost. When the police arrived and took her away, the house fell into a silence that wasn't tragic. It was liberating. That night, Daniel hugged me tightly. Forgive me, Mom, he sobbed. I should have listened to you. I stroked his hair the way I used to when he was a child. It's over, son. What matters is that you see the truth now. I looked at the table, the untouched food, the empty chair where Carolina had sat, and I understood something. I hadn't won because I was strong. I won because I never stopped being myself. Because an older woman is not weak. She is dangerous, she is wise, and when she is pushed to the edge, she learns to fly. That night, after the police took Carolina away, the house floated in a strange quiet that felt almost alive. It wasn't the suffocating silence of secrets or the heavy silence of fear. It was a new silence, one that breathed, one that made space, one that let the walls rest for the first time in years. But Daniel and I did not rest. He sat on the couch with his elbows on his knees, his hands covering his face. I stayed beside him, my purse still on my lap, as if I didn't want to let go of the recording that had changed everything. Several minutes passed before he lifted his head. His eyes were red, not just from crying, but from shame. Mom, he said with a broken voice, how could I allow all this? How didn't I see who she really was? I looked at him with the tenderness only a mother who has waited too long can feel. Because you loved her, I said. And when we love someone, we want to believe, we want to trust, we want things to be fine, even if something inside us is screaming that they're not. He swallowed painfully. But you were alone. I wasn't alone, I replied, touching his hand. I had myself. And when a woman reaches my age and learns to listen to her own silence, that silence stays with her, even when the whole world tries to silence her. Daniel lowered his gaze. You didn't deserve any of this. What matters, I whispered, is that it's over now. But I knew it wasn't completely over. Wounds don't close just because the truth has come out. Sometimes, when the truth appears suddenly, it hurts more than the lie that came before it. Daniel stood up and began pacing the living room like a man trying to remember how to use his legs. I'm scared, he admitted, stopping in front of the window. Scared of what's coming, of what people will say, of what will happen to Carolina, and what will happen to me. That's natural, I replied. Fear is part of an ending, but it's also part of a beginning. He turned toward me. I don't know who I am without her. That sentence tore at me more deeply than any scream Carolina had ever thrown my way. Son, I said, getting up and walking toward him. She wrapped herself around you so slowly you didn't notice she was stealing your voice. You didn't love her. You were surviving beside her. That's not love, it's a prison. Daniel shut his eyes as if he needed strength to accept the truth. Mama, he whispered, how are you still standing? I gave him a soft smile. I didn't have another choice. The next morning, the house was filled with a different kind of light. It wasn't just the sun. It was the absence of Carolina's shadow. I made myself a coffee and watched the steam rise, reminding me of mornings in my youth, when I didn't yet know what it felt like to fear my own home. Daniel came downstairs slowly, like someone afraid to wake something sleeping. The police called, he said bluntly. Carolina confessed. I froze, not out of surprise, but because even truth can still wound. Yes, he continued. Everything. The call, the plan, the lawyer, what she intended to do to you. She admitted it. I leaned against the counter and took a long breath. They want your formal statement now. I nodded. I'll give it. For you and for me. Daniel sat across from me, his fingers intertwined. I don't know if I'll ever forgive myself, he said quietly, because I brought you here. I put you in danger. Son, I replied gently, forgiveness doesn't arrive all at once. It comes slowly, like the first light of dawn. And it begins when you look at the truth without running from it. Today, you're doing that. He looked at me the way he hadn't since he was a little boy, with that silent respect that comes from recognizing strength in someone who always gave more than she received. After breakfast, we each began tidying the house. I picked up a cushion from the floor and found a small embroidery I had made years ago. Peace reigns here. I chuckled sadly. It had never been true, but now, perhaps, it could begin to be. As I put the embroidery in a drawer, I heard Daniel call me. Mama, can we go for a walk? I feel like I'm suffocating in here. I agreed. Sometimes fresh air is the only cure for a heart that feels trapped. The park was quiet. Mothers pushing strollers, an old man feeding pigeons, teenagers laughing as if the world could never hurt them. We walked in silence until Daniel sat on a bench beneath the shade of a tree. Mama, he said suddenly, do you think I deserve to be happy? I sat beside him. Of course you do, I answered. But first you need to learn something important. Happiness cannot enter a place where guilt takes up all the space. He lowered his head. I want to make things right. Then start with yourself, I said softly. And then we'll deal with everything else. Daniel rested his head on my shoulder, just like he used to when he had a fever as a little boy. I stroked his hair. For the first time in years, I felt he needed me not as a comfortable shadow, but as a light guiding him out of a tunnel. When we returned home, I received an unexpected call from the police. The inspector spoke with a solemn tone. Mrs. Castro, is there something else we should know? My blood ran cold. What's going on? Carolina also confessed that the lawyer wasn't only for declaring you incompetent. She planned to forge a signature and sell your house behind your back. For the first time in weeks, my legs weakened. My house. Yes, she already had interested buyers. If you hadn't acted when you did, you would be homeless today. I hung up slowly. The truth felt like one last knife, but I sensed it was the final one. Daniel rushed into the room as soon as he saw my face. Mama, what happened? Carolina? I inhaled deeply. She also planned to sell my house. He covered his mouth with his hand, horrified. No, she can't. Yes, Daniel. She could, and she intended to. We held each other for a long moment, not out of sadness, but relief. Relief that we had reached the truth in time. That night, while preparing tea, I thought of all the times life had pushed me to the edge. Widowhood, loneliness, the quiet insults from people who claimed to love me. The moments I stayed silent because a mother is supposed to endure. As I poured the hot water into the cup, I thought, no more. Daniel approached, his eyes calmer now. Mama, I'm going to support you in everything that comes. I promise. I looked at him and, for the first time in years, saw my son again, not the man who had been manipulated. I believe you, I said, handing him a cup. He took it. Do you know what hurts the most? He asked softly. That I could have lost the only person who truly loves me. I touched his face. You didn't lose me. I'm here. And now we are both free. That dawn, while Daniel slept deeply, I went down to the patio alone. The moon lit the remains of the day. The fallen chair, the messy table, the untouched silence. I breathed in the cold air and let it fill my lungs. Then I said it out loud like a decree. It's over. My life begins now. For the first time in decades, it felt true. Several weeks have passed since that night when the truth finally broke through like lightning splitting an endless storm. Today, I look at my life from a different angle, not from the wound, but from the stitch that has started to close it. Not from fear, but from the courage I discovered without even searching for it. And although shadows still appear from time to time, they no longer have the strength to scare me. The house, which once felt like a minefield where every step could trigger conflict, now feels like a home again. Daniel breathes deeply in the mornings, sleeps peacefully at night, and has recovered that gentle look I thought was lost forever, buried under the layers of manipulation Carolina wrapped around his life. Sometimes I watch him quietly while he makes coffee or waters the plants, and pride warms my chest. He has returned to himself. He has returned to being my son. As for Carolina, her name no longer holds power over me. She is still in the hands of justice. Her full confession, her history of control and emotional aggression, the evidence I provided, everything finally allowed the law to stand on my side for once. I don't feel hatred toward her, not even satisfaction at her downfall. What I feel is peace, a peace that comes from knowing my silence no longer belongs to anyone else. Sometimes I find myself thinking about all the women my age who live similar realities. Women who stay quiet, who hold their composure, who endure because they believe that's what they're supposed to do, who think they're too old to start a fight, women who hide behind a patience that was never truly theirs. If this story taught me anything, it's this. A woman is not a victim by default. A woman is a force that, once awakened, can change everything. I've started sewing again. My hands, which once trembled with fear, now tremble with excitement. Each stitch reminds me who I am, someone who builds, repairs, transforms, someone who joins pieces back together. Whether they're pieces of fabric, pieces of affection, or pieces of myself. I've also gone back to my habit of walking alone at dawn. The first morning, I was startled by a long shadow on the ground, until I realized it was mine. Not someone else's shadow over me, but my own. Steady, honest, firm. Daniel has told me several times, "Mom, I don't know what would have happened to me without you." And I always answer the same thing. It's not about me, son. It's about you waking up in time. The house is no longer suffocated by secrets. It is open, clear, clean. At night, I turn on a small hallway light, not out of fear, but out of habit. And every time that little light shines, I think, this is what a truth looks like when it stops hiding. Sometimes I sit in the patio where so many arguments once exploded and look up at the sky. I don't search for answers. I just give thanks. Thanks for the strength to face what I had to face. Thanks to life for giving me time. Thanks to my husband, wherever he is, for reminding me of who I am. And even thanks to my tears, because they were the ones that finally filled the cup of courage I needed to defend myself. Today, after everything, I can walk through Daniel's home without feeling like I'm stepping on shards of glass. I can look in the mirror without lowering my gaze. I can sleep without fear. And above all, I can say aloud, without my voice shaking, I made it. I'm here. And I will stay here. Not as a shadow, not as decoration, but as a whole woman, aware, awake, complete. And now, before I say goodbye to you, who stayed with me until the end of my story, I want to tell you something from the deepest part of my heart. Never let anyone, family, partner, child, or in-law, take your voice away. Never assume age makes you weak. Never accept a corner when you deserve an entire space. Never believe it's too late to defend yourself, because it isn't. It is never too late. Before you go, I want to invite you, sincerely, subscribe to the channel and leave your like. It shows me you're here, that you're with me, and that these stories touch your heart. And tell me in the comments from which city you're watching, what you thought of this story, and what you would have done in my place. I'll be reading with affection.